Hello everyone, I am the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today I am going to be giving my second forecast, my second update on the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. Since it's been about a week from my last video, I figured I'd give another update on this. And since it's around this mid-April timeframe, a lot of companies and a lot of other sources have already started to announce their hurricane season predictions. So I got like a bunch of those. So if you stick around to the end of the video, you'll be able to see my forecast, my updated forecast, and a bunch of other places such as AccuWeather, the Weather Channel, and even Colorado State University. All right, we're gonna get right into it here. All right, kind of investigate the hurricane season and what it could, how it could turn out here. So, starting off here, all right. Now this isn't anything about the hurricane season, but to show you this frontal boundary right here. All right. So this is just using this as an example. I mean, this is a real map from today. I'm saying I'm using this as an example as to what can happen, especially in the early part of the hurricane season. All right. So frontal boundaries can sometimes come down, and low pressure can sometimes spawn off of these frontal systems, especially if it's like a stalled front, kind of like the one up here in Canada. And sometimes low pressures can spawn off of here and turn into subtropical or even tropical storms. So keep an eye out for that, especially in the early part of the hurricane season closer to home. All right, let's take a look at those sea surface temperature anomalies. Again, very warm, especially in the western half of the Gulf of Mexico, and of course throughout the east coast of Florida. Some areas have cooled down a little bit since last we talked about this, but the Caribbean is not really average anymore. It's actually starting to see a little warm up in the Caribbean, which is pretty concerning, because the Caribbean is usually pretty warm. Now let's take a look at this map, okay? This is showing you the weak El Nino we're starting to see develop. We're not there yet, but we're starting to see it develop, okay? If we look in the Nino 3-4 zone, which is right in here, you can see a lot more yellow starting to fill in, although there is a little bit of blue still, which is probably why it's keeping those numbers down a little bit, but majority of the region has some yellows and some light oranges there, so it's already starting to warm up into an El Nino, and it's only a matter of time as this continues. All right, so I will be coming back to this map most likely later on in the video, and I will show why. Out in the tropical Atlantic, I didn't actually show this one in the last one because I wanted to focus closer to home, but here you are. You can see right off the coast of Africa where those storms typically merge off as we head through, July, August, and September. And that area is looking like a couple degrees Celsius above average, and right here off the coast of South America, 5 degrees Celsius above average, so pretty warm there. Even the East Coast is pretty warm, and that Gulf Stream area off the coast of the Carolinas. So an El Nino is coming here, and I'm going to be talking about through this video what that could mean. All right, so the actual sea surface temperatures, so anywhere in this yellow represents sea surface temperatures of 25 degrees Celsius or higher, which is about 77, around there, 77.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually that's about the level when we can start to see tropical storms develop. Usually around 80 is like more conducive, especially if you want to see like a hurricane. And that is represented by this second shading, or even deeper shading than that, of orange color, which is shown here in the central and southwestern Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Gulf Stream. We see some 80-degree waters there, and around 81, 82, even in parts of the Caribbean. And in the Pacific and the East Pac, I mean, we're talking like mid-80s over there. Like the water is getting really warm over there, which makes sense. The hurricane season actually starts about a month from today, so we're already starting to get underway pretty soon. How have these changed from the last week? I know this map looked a little different in the last video. Like I said, North Central Gulf had a little cool off here. I mean, there's a frontal system coming through, so that doesn't make sense. But still, over the last week, the Western Gulf has warmed up, and like I said before, the Caribbean has warmed up about a degree or so over the past week. And the Western Atlantic Ocean has sort of cooled off a little bit in this zone, but still well above average. And the fact that it's cooled off and it's still this far, above average is really saying something here. All right, so I'm going to introduce some new maps here. This one I did not show in my last one. This is basically the CHI 200 APA forecast. Basically what this means, the velocity anomaly is basically the convection. Anywhere in the green, maybe increased convection, and then in that orange brownish color, kind of decreased convection here, right? Kind of like the MJO forecast. So you can see we're going to be showing off this one and also some other models as well, all right? So here you can see right now over northern South America, and actually we can look at the satellite. You can see some increased convection here, and it kind of shows in the satellite. Look at that convection. All right, it is also the right time of day to see convection down there. But yes, it's flaring up, and we are seeing increased convection due to where we see those greens located right now. And it's so interesting to see it in like a stacked pattern like this, because you can almost kind of see it move further and further east, right? Like the greens will move further east, and like everything kind of moves from west to east. So it's kind of like patterns that'll settle in. So Northern South America right now, and maybe you can see the timestamps on the right here, maybe through like the end of the month, like in 10 days, still there. But maybe by the beginning of May, we start to see some orange and brown kind of fill in there. Maybe some less amounts of convection, right? And you can kind of see that as they move through. This goes to about the end of May, about 1.5 months from now. And you can see maybe some decreased convection. Right? But some models and some things show different scenarios playing out. So let's take a look at that here. The velocity potential anomalies here, right here on the GEFS ensembles. Right? You can see right now, again, increased convection over South America. I think that is pretty evident, again, by the judging by the satellite. Right? And even over the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, which there was some unsettled activity over the Gulf, but that's associated with this storm up here, which if it wasn't for like the shear and dry air, I mean, these storms could flare up maybe into something. I mean, it's spinning off of a frontal boundary, but still some thunderstorms over the Gulf of Mexico that could cause some problems for the southeast, right? But as we go through time, you can kind of see that move east, see those orangish, those reddish colors kind of move east with it. Maybe by the end of the month, we see some decreased convection over those same areas. And you can see it building over South America there. And then it kind of, and this is only goes out about 16 days or so, but here's this next increased convection batch that would eventually move. This will eventually move. You kind of see it connects. There's Africa here on the left and right side of your screen. And it would continue to move from west to east, right? Kind of like in these patterns, kind of like I said before. So let's take a look at the CEFS now, right? And you kind of see again that increased convection. I don't know why the map is cut off. That's not because I'm not scrolling up, because I'm scrolling up as far as I can. I think it's just a map, but I'm able to read it, so I can tell you guys the dates. So the 23rd to the 29th, or sorry, 23rd to the 30th of April, you can kind of see again that increased convection over the tropical Atlantic and over North and South America. Now, do remember that the Saharan air layer is also playing a role here because it's still early in the season. I'll be showing you that in a little bit. That's still playing a role to suppress some of that tropical activity in the Atlantic. All right, but still, where the Saharan air layer is not present, we're definitely seeing some increased areas of convection. All right, and you can see that kind of move to the east. Now it's over Africa. This is going up to May 7th, so April 30th to May 7th. Now we see decreased convection there over the Gulf. All right, and that continues kind of through May. Kind of this is like the end of May. All right, still kind of persisting. So different models have it kind of playing out differently here. All right, another look at the satellite. Again, you can see the increased convection over South America. You can definitely see the Gulf of Mexico is starting to see some flare-ups here in thunderstorm activity. All right, so here's on tropical tidbits. This is the CDAS version. Now, the yellow here kind of represents 26 degrees Celsius, which is about 79 degrees Fahrenheit. So the yellow pretty much represents 80 degrees. And you can see it kind of sneaking out through the Gulf of Mexico, pretty much the entire Caribbean. So, and even parts of the Caribbean approaching 28 Celsius, maybe like closer to mid-80s, and mid to upper 80s, where it's 30 and 31 Celsius over in the East Pac. So waters are warming up. So this is kind of what I'm going to talk about here. It's going to be El Nino versus warm sea surface temperatures. You know, who's going to win? If the warmer sea surface temperatures prevail and continue through at this rate through the hurricane season, I think that combined with the El Nino could still average out, kind of like weigh the balance, and it could kind of average out the season. It's kind of like what we got our sights set on for right now. But of course, we're going to continue to talk about this as we head through the rest of the video here. So as you can see, we have broken the zero line, but of course, we are still in an ENSO neutral zone right here. Again, El Nino is above 0.5, and then above 0.5 degrees above average, and then below 0.5 degrees below average. Below here is the La Nina. So El Nino up here, La Nina down there. But we're steadily climbing. I mean, we're at this rate, we might even be in that 0.5 zone by, the end of May or maybe even June. But remember, it's not just like, it's not once it hits there, it's instantly El Nino. It does have to stay there for a bit to prove it's not any a coincidental fluctuation that could easily come back down. So it has to kind of stay in that threshold for a little bit of time. All right, so let's take a look at the wind shear map. Looks pretty similar to how we showed it last video, and again, it's pretty much expected because it's April. All right, but that's why we're going to kind of do these updated hurricane season update videos, because things can change, and of course, we're getting closer to May. So I hope to get several of these, maybe even like 5 or 8 of these at least out before the hurricane season, so I can keep you guys updated as frequently as I can. And things do change, right, in the hurricane season prediction forecasting here. But you can see the wind shear pretty high. I mean, 70 knots is like kind of unbearable for, even if it was a Cat 5 hurricane, that's kind of unbearable. Even upwards of 90 to 100 knots in this zone out here in the tropical Atlantic. A little less shear out here in the western Atlantic, and you can see it's been dropping 10 knots, indicated by those blue dashed lines. Been dropping by about 10 knots over the past 24 hours, but still unbearable shear, right? Here's that low pressure, that winter storm up there that I discussed in my previous video. All right, so here is the Saharan air layer map to kind of show you what I was talking about. This is kind of, even if the MJO kind of shows that, increased convection, the Saharan air layer kind of says, well, no, because it's coming from Africa, kind of like that dusty air that's going to kind of suppress the thunderstorm activity. Pretty much near in the Gulf of Mexico, not much Saharan air is present. Over the Caribbean, there is definitely a lot. Notice over South America, though, where it's not, is where the convection is. Right, and then as that kind of lifts out and lifts away over time, you'll see that convection start to be over here. Right, see how the convection is kind of suppressed south of the 10 degrees north latitude line? Well, that's because of the Saharan air layer kind of being dominant over the Atlantic basin right now. So let's take a look at the GFS model. All right, not really showing any explicit tropical activity, but there is something to keep an eye out, and I do want to show this because this is about 10 days out, but I do want to show this as an example, again, another example of what we could be seeing as we head through May and June, right? So here you see this playing out. We kind of have a blocking high pressure that's kind of protecting the mid-Atlantic here from this storm moving up the coast. Got another high pressure that's retreating here to kind of allow, so this one kind of keeps the storm to the south, maybe has it moving a little slower. This one kind of helps to pull it in this direction, so it kind of has to move through this zone here, even though the high is kind of a blocking high, but that'll eventually be retreating as well. So you can see that kind of retreating off. And then this high, again, right here, high pressure in this zone right here, is going to allow this low pressure to kind of exit. But notice it's strengthened. All right, you can kind of see 1,005 millibars, 1,001. All right, and it's a nice batch of convective activity, all right, that kind of leaves Florida. And wind shear, as you'll see, in this map right here, wind shear is very high. All right, you can normally the low kind of protects itself a little bit, maybe by a little wall of less shear kind of building around it, but there's just none. I mean, shear is engulfing this entire thing. All right, 50 knots and probably higher because it goes up to 50 and then higher from there. So it's probably much more than that in terms of shear. But if we take a look at the 850 millibar cyclonic vortices here, you can see that, I mean, it's not the best I've ever seen, but considering it's April, that's pretty well kept together for April tropical standards, if you will. And it kind of moves off, and then the frontal system kind of comes in behind it. There's a pretty big storm up there, kind of up north here in the mid-Atlantic. But if we do take a look, so let's actually take this back here. If we take a look at the surface winds, right, we look for those surface winds of 39 miles per hour or greater to get that tropical development. And while small and maybe not visible to some of you, you can see a little green area indicated by 34 knots, aka 39 miles an hour of wind. Now, again, that doesn't mean this is going to be a tropical storm. It could be a subtropical storm. It could be kind of like a extra tropical low, but little green and a little yellow there indicating some winds above 40 miles an hour, maybe upwards of 50, associated with a, pretty well stacked, I mean, again, for April standards, low pressure system, right? And this could be like a mid-latitude low, maybe a little bit further north, but it does kind of move away. And then, again, here's that other low, maybe getting off the coast here with some tropical storm force winds, again, maybe mid-latitudes, but certainly something that could be developing into something tropical or subtropical. Now, we do also want to take a look at, so basically what I did was I compiled the last 5 El Nino hurricane seasons and kind of gotten the data from them to show how El Nino seasons, especially recent ones from like the last 20 years or so, or 30 years ago till now, kind of turn out. Now, there has been a change in the averages since then, right? We have a 1981 to 2010 average that came out in 2011, and a 1991 to 2020 average that came out in 2021, and of course, In 2031, we will have the 2001 to 2030 average. But of course, that's just how it moves every 10 years. So if we take a look at this, I have color coded it. So the years that fall under the 1981 2010 average, and the 1 year that falls under the 1991 to 2020 average. All right, so let's take a look at this here. So the 1981-2010 average shows 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. That's kind of the set of averages I grew up on, right? Just start at 12 and keep having it. It was simple enough. But now we have, on the 1991 to 2020 averages, the ones that we use now, 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. So 2015, the most recent El Nino year that we had, we only had 11 named storms, 4 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes. And while that is, pretty good chunk below average, do note that 2 major hurricanes, if they both strike land, God forbid, that could still cause some pretty damaging impacts there. So definitely don't rule out any El Nino year, even though it might be below average or average this year. 2009 that was kind of a dead year. 9 named storms, 3 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes. We couldn't even hit double digits in named storms that year. But still, we had just as many major hurricanes as 2015. We seem to always get at least a couple, or one, as we'll get into in a little bit. 2004. Now, 2004 was a different year because we had what was called a El Nino Mordecai, or Mordecai El Nino, however you want to call it. And if I go back to this, so basically what happened was, so let's say this. So this is the El Nino 3-4, or Nino 3-4, sorry, region right here. So basically what happened is that there was kind of cooler air to the east in kind of like the Nino 1-2 region. And then like west of the Nino 4 region, we had even more cool air. And then kind of the warm air sitting in the middle. And the warm waters, sitting in the middle. So that led to still above average, still led to more conducive conditions in the Atlantic. So 2004, it's kind of a outlier year, if you will. And I don't think we'll have a Mordecai El Nino this year because if we go back here, the water off to the east here, which is why I pointed out earlier in the video, is like 4 or 5 degrees Celsius above average. So yeah, that is pretty significant. So I don't see this cooling down or let alone getting below average anytime soon. But we will see. But that had 15 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 6 major hurricanes. Usually there's a bigger gap in between these numbers, and then this time there's really not. I mean, that was a pretty devastating year. Of course, that was the year the hurricane that's most memorable to me, was Hurricane Charlie hitting southwestern Florida. 2002 was a pretty average year, actually. We had 12 named storms, 4 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes, so slightly below average, but in the named storm realm, it was actually kind of closer to average. And in 1997 was absolutely dead. 8 named storms, 3 hurricanes, and 1 major hurricane. All right, finally, we're going to take a look at the ENSO outlook to kind of wrap this video up here. So if you watched my summer outlook, you definitely did see this already. But if we take a look here, we have a ENSO neutral right now. And according to this, now this was released at March 9th, so I'm curious to get the April update. When that comes out, I'll be sure to show you guys. Because I think the April update might have us hitting El Nino by June. I think is what's going to happen because it's mid-April and it's already kind of sneaking out there. I think by like later June, as late as July, I think we'll see that switch over to El Nino. I think it could happen in June because the water temperatures are sneaking up there. But main point is La Nina not going to happen. Probably broken the couple-year streak or a few-year streak of La Nina. And El Nino could even last, of course, increasing probability, 2/3 chance maybe, into the winter time. But for hurricane season, which lasts from June, July, August, September, October, and November, kind of most active in here though, we will see that El Nino. All right? And if ENSO neutral, let's say it actually held out longer, right? Maybe we saw a slowdown in the increase in, because ENSO neutral hurricane seasons can still be kind of like a toss-up. They can still be pretty active though. Because that's how 2004's hurricane season started out and then transitioned to an El Nino later in the fall, or early in the fall, later in the summer. So if that can hold out longer, maybe if we do see, because on this March 9th update, the probability, it's practically 50-50, but still, ENSO neutral, even in July, edges out El Nino. So if we can have that hold, I think we could, still possibly see a pretty active hurricane season, especially early on before El Nino kind of takes its grasp. If we take a look here, again, at the modeling, kind of showing, again, breaking that 0.5 degree mark around May or June. And remember, there's a lag time, because remember, it's not like as soon as it hits El Nino, it's like, boom, we have the El Nino conditions. I feel like El Nino hurricane season's really set in if, like, in the early spring we see El Nino start to creep in. That way, by later spring and summer, it's in, and we feel the full effects of it during the hurricane season. But if it's taking effect, if we start to see it reach that threshold in June, maybe even as late as July, I feel like it could take till August for it to kind of settle in, and we could still have a pretty active hurricane season on our hands, especially, or at least an average one, considering those warm waters that I've been talking about earlier. And finally, let's look at the CFS V2 forecast here for the Nino 3-4 region, updated end of March. Of course, surely any updates come out, I will definitely keep it updated for you guys. And if we look here, you can see hitting that 0.5 threshold right around middle May, end of May, but pretty much around June. All right, and again, there is that lag time, so we'll definitely be keeping an eye out here. All right, so maybe we would see it settle in around July for those El Nino conditions. So bottom line here, expecting El Nino sometime in the early to middle of summer. We'll see what happens when we get the new hurricane or the new El Nino or Nino 3-4 updates out. But of course, we'll definitely be keeping you guys updated on this as we continue down the line here. All right, so after all of my analysis for my hurricane season forecast number 2, forecast and discussion number 2, here we are arriving at our second forecast. I have made a very minor adjustments to my forecast. It's April. I don't expect to make major changes to my forecast here, but I did make a small change. All right, so averages in last year's data, we kind of know 14 named storms, 8 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes last year. AccuWeather is predicting 11 to 15 named storms, 4 to 8 hurricanes, 1 to 3 major hurricanes. Weather Company, aka the Weather Channel, 15 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. So I feel like that's kind of the highest we've seen so far. Colorado State University, known for making their good hurricane predictions here, 13 named storms, 6 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes. And mine, I kind of just adjusted the range a little bit, made it a little bit more compact. So 13 to 15 named storms, 5 to 7 hurricanes, and 2 to 3 major hurricanes. So either a slightly below average, maybe average, or it's tiny bit above average. So in the realm of about average activity is what we're thinking for this hurricane season as of April 16th. So thank you guys for watching. Of course, I'll be keeping you updated on this down the line. Be sure to like and subscribe, of course. I am The Weather Dude, signing off. Till next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.